Okay then, so the topic I'm deciding to talk about is analysing and interpreting financial statements, specifically profitability. Profitability is how successful a business is at creating wealth for shareholders. Um, they use four important ratios, which are the return on ordinary shareholders' funds, which is ROSF, return on capital employed, ROIC, operating profit margin, and gross profit margin. Uh, uh, that covers all the questions really. They're all pretty useful for like if investors or any external people who look at financial statements want to like see whether or not the business is doing well, seeing whether or not it is doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is creating wealth for the shareholders, to see whether or not it's a viable business option for them. And then okay then, in an everyday situation, the operating profit margin can be seen in an everyday situation such as in supermarkets, because they usually have a low operating profit margin as they operate with low prices, which stimulates sales, as the equation is operating profit over sales revenue times 100 to get a percentage. So overall, it would increase the total profit, operating profit, while like a business like a jewelers. So a business like a jewelers would have a high operating profit margin because they have a low amount of sales, but this is due to like competition in the marketplace or the type of customer they might have, which would obviously be a high-end kind of customer or customer with a lot of money, as their goods are pretty expensive. So that influences the margin of that business. What other one is there? Well, Royce obviously looks at the effectiveness of funds deployed, so that could pretty much apply to any business, I guess. Any business, I guess. So like, someone thinking they want to invest in university, they might want to see whether or not they're distributing the amount of money that they already have between the departments well before they want to invest any more money into it. And yeah, I'm gonna leave that. Oh, but then yeah, the supermarket one. You could also, in the current news right now, there is an article about Next and M&S on the BBC News website, which is saying that Next has obviously, what is it they said? They said that Next annual profits have jumped up by 12%, which obviously they would have had to use a ratio of some kind to actually get that percent, I would say, which makes it comparable to another company, M&S, which is what they've compared it to. So that's a real life situation. Yay. Okay, next slide. An opposing side of this theory, I guess. Well, in the textbook it says that these ratios are pretty much useless unless there's a benchmark to compare it against. It can't be like, oh wow, 10%, great stuff. 10% could quite easily be bad for some companies, but it could be really good for other companies. It depends what the benchmark was. Other sources would say they're useful because it makes it easier to compare businesses, because you can't really compare businesses as they're pretty big and they're pretty diverse, and like, yeah, and it makes it easier to compare the business over a period of time to see if it's improving or not improving. No. So obviously that means that it's used in real life, which makes it useful. So that's another source. Yeah, I think that's about it for that one. What are the most valuable viewpoints on this subject? The most valuable viewpoints would be from the users of the statements and the ratios, because if they're not using them, obviously it's not that great, and we'll obviously want to value what they say because they use them. If they're not used in real life, it would make them pretty useless, I guess. Blah, 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 blah. So they're very significant because they function in the real world. External factors to be considered. Some businesses have different year ends. That means, say, like one company year end is actually 31st of December, and other companies could quite easily be the 31st of March, which means that they're operating in different trading conditions, which affects how much sales, which would affect the ratios and distort them, I guess, somehow. Because then some periods are more profitable than others. Like, I'm guessing Christmas would be a pretty profitable season because there's more sales because everyone's buying, rather than, I don't know, March, because it's just an average month. Okay, then where have I got my information from? I've got my information from my head, from some examples, from my textbook, which is the My Accounting Lab textbook, and the BBC News. The BBC is pretty credible because it reports on all things business related as well as other things in the world, which means that they're up to date and they're recent. However, they can be seen as not that credible because I think that they're paid by the government, which means that obviously they need to report whatever it is that the government wants them to report on, and they're pretty much deemed biased because they only really show one side of things. They're not going to show you like how people in Afghanistan are feeling about the war that we're waging upon them. They're going to be thinking, well, we've just like got some of our soldiers back, yay. I think that's... Oh yeah, so the BBC News isn't the most credible. I think my textbook is pretty credible, so I think that's the most credible source. Okay, then that's me done in 7 minutes 15, I think, more or less. Thanks. Bye.